Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Crunch Time. It's the playoffs. It's week 15. We are here to answer any and all of your fantasy football related and otherwise questions. I'll answer whatever you guys want. I'm here for the people. I'm joined today, as of last week as well. Had to bring some heavy hitters in for these playoff matchups. So I got Themi on the mic with me today. Themi, tell the people about yourself. Where can they find you?
You can find me at Gridiron Greek on the Twitterverse.
On the Twitterverse. It's a beautiful verse. Well, actually, it's a
Uh,
terrifyingly ugly verse, actually,
and
full of
not
creepers.
just because of recent events. It's always been kind of a
Yeah,
cesspool, but that's why we like
that's
it.
a that's a fact. Yeah, I mean, I do love my little cesspool. I can't deny that. Yeah, I mean, as always, have to shout out the brand. Brought to you by the Fantasy Football by Broto app. Go to your app stores, Google Play, Apple Podcast, or yeah, well, listen to the podcast as well. I think I did this exactly the same way last time. Absolutely, listen to the podcast as well. You can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. But yeah, go to the Apple downloads, your Google Play Store. You can get the Fantasy Football by Broto app, which is absolutely free and brings you all the stuff that we're going to bring up today, like the start sit tool and the true matchup rank and player cards and advanced analytics and all of our articles, and the podcast is on there, and the waiver rankings. And yeah, so definitely head on over, download that ish. And I guess we'll get right into player news right away. I mean, it's obviously maybe a little bit of old news, but I think it's the most pertinent news is that Kyler Murray is going to be out for the remainder of the 2022-2023 season with a torn ACL. It was announced today that he'll be back in 8 months. They do expect him to make a recovery in time for maybe at least 14 games next year. So that's really good news. It was a clean tear. Really no additional surgery that they think of otherwise. But obviously why it's the most important is Marquise Brown is back. DeAndre Hopkins is back. Two superstar fantasy players that now are with Colt McCoy. So against the Broncos going in, because I feel like we're going to get a lot of questions, so I'll preface it right away, is how do you feel about those two options against the Broncos with Colt McCoy under center?
They played a pretty tough defense last week, and they had middling finishes. The game script was kind of in their favor, but it just really couldn't get anything going. I don't know if that's because he was just kind of thrust into the thing, into the game. I'm sure the extra week, preparing with him will probably help a little bit, but I think this is even a tougher matchup than the Patriots, like by far. So, I'm expecting a lot more disappointment from those guys, but it's really going to have to be someone else really great on the other side to try to sit them.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I really
absolutely.
temper expectations with. I think that's just an obvious thing with a backup quarterback in a really tough matchup.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in general, for sure. Yeah. Well, and I mean, speaking of, we have also Mike White. He has multiple rib fractures. He's seen 10 different doctors, the beat writer said. None of them would clear him to play. Out for at least 2 games is now what is coming up via Ian Rappaport literally just moments ago. So Zach Wilson now has a chance to win the starting job back. Garrett Wilson was looking like an absolute star. Obviously, they're going to run the ball through Bam Knight a lot. I mean, I might just be saying all of the ideas. I think it's definitely a downgrade to everybody in the passing offense. Garrett Wilson still has the most upside. Elijah Moore, honestly, probably a bench. And Bam Knight is a solid play.
Yeah. Well, we know with Zach Wilson, like the pass attempts are going to go down. When you had Mike White or Joe Flacco, they could easily throw for 50 times in a game, and you wouldn't really think twice about it. And even if those targets were in quality, and even if only you're completing like half of those, there's probably more completions than Zach Wilson's actually having attempts,
Yeah.
uh, which is not great. When he had Brees Hall, it was a much better offense because he had a great running back that he could, like lean on, and you had someone that you knew you could trust in like a great talent, obviously. But yeah, I think outside of Garrett Wilson, it's going to be really hard to trust anyone. Tyler Conklin basically has no value anymore outside of maybe like a random touchdown. And yeah, even in a matchup where the Lions are, now the number one run defense in adjusted fantasy points over the past few weeks, like a lot of people have been pointing out. I think Bam Knight's Donovan Knight's basically the only person is going to get a decent amount of volume.
Yeah, I agree there. And I mean, we've got some questions right now, so I don't like to keep the people waiting. Player news is something that we'll always come back to and talk about as we answer these questions as well. I do have the Fantasy Life app pulled up and everything, so I'll make sure I get to everything. Um, One of the first questions was in from Boyd, actually, our boy Boyd over at Broto. Follow him for all some great dynasty content. Oh, okay, we're watching the World
Nothing.
Cup as well. 2-0.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
Argentina's
I'm
up
watching the
2-0.
World Cup. So if I
No,
just
of
start like
course.
freaking out,
We
I
can talk
apologize.
football and football. That's kind
Yeah.
of, the
When I
people can
answer
have both
questions, I
today. It's a
promise I'm
huge
like
moment.
focused in, but
Huge moment. So Boyd drops his first one. He's asking Judy or PPR. Judy getting obviously the Cardinals secondary, who is a little banged up but has been pretty serviceable. Juju getting the Texans, who are one of the best true matchup teams in the NFL for wide receivers. They're very, very good at stemming passing production, and part of that comes from a narrative-based analysis and the fact that you can just run the ball on them with ease. So why pass when you can score 32 on the ground, and control the clock as well with minimal turnovers and mistake options? Also, Jalen Peter and or Petrie, however you may pronounce it, but Jalen Peter and Derek Stingley have been a revelation for that secondary as well and look absolutely phenomenal. I mean, definitely defensive rookie of the year candidates, but Sauce Gardner is in existence. So that's going to be a little tough to ring that from anybody. That said, I think you have to go with Judy. He had a very tough defensive matchup last week as well. Or Juju rather. Sorry. I was getting my Jews mixed up. Juju over Judy here for me. He had a very, very tough matchup last week as well and performed incredibly. In fact, his matchup in coinciding declining target share was enough for me to want to bench him and name him as a bust candidate last week in our sleeper bust article. So I'm going to, put that 1 week hatred to rest and know that Kansas City offense is one of those teams that even with true matchup rank and things like points over average and points per game, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt because they can put up points on anybody.
yeah, I think that's fair to say. It's just he's been a little disappointing, at times. I think part of that's the injury. Like you look at his more disappointing games in the past few weeks, and it's because he's not really playing. He's gotten a little hurt. He's got 38 offensive snap percentage in 2 consecutive weeks. But like you said, the true matchup rank needs a little more context because it is that they're getting blown out the Texans. Um, I do understand that like Juju is on an amazing team, amazing offense. But I think personally in a game that even with bad quarterbacks, I'd rather go with Jerry Judy just because I know he's probably going to be in the game script where he's going to get the volume. I believe Cortland Sutton's been rolled out again.
Yep.
And
Brett Rippien or Rippin in at quarterback as well, though.
yep.
Obviously, not a great defensive matchup as well against the Cardinals with
No, it's not. They're
Byron
actually
Murphy in his face.
surprisingly great against wide receivers, but bad against everything else. So I wonder if it truly is a like a Texans kind of situation again.
Right,
But you brought up some good points about how they're pretty solid against the pass against wide receivers at least. And that's probably just because they're getting destroyed by tight ends, which is why Greg Dulcich is such a great start this week. But
well, and Boyd was in here early with another one, but because you just said that, I'm going to hyper skip just one
oh,
question, and he'll understand for our boy Bick. Boyd will
yeah,
understand. Full PPR: Fryermuth versus Carolina or Dulcich versus Arizona. And I think that you saw today on Twitter early in the morning, I answered Hoove's question, this exact
yep,
question, and for me, it's Dulcich. It's a very similar, points per game over the last 6, with Dulcich obviously having the second best matchup in true matchup rank to a team that allows 72.9% over the expected average to the position. I think Dulcich is a smash here, and I think actually, as bad as it is going to look, it's kind of one of those things where it's like you don't want to watch him get those points because they're going to be errant passes and stuff, but it also is he's the check down option for their bad quarterback that now takes over for Russell Wilson. I'm a little more concerned about Mitch Trubisky because he will just air it out and throw 5 picks a game. So that's where I think Dulcich game script as well is a little bit better and obviously a much better matchup.
yep. Pat Fryermuth is not really getting like an insane target share anymore. He's still a pretty good tight end just because of how bad everything else is, but it's really hard to trust him in a bad matchup. You got a new quarterback in, well, same, old quarterback for the Steelers ish, but Mason Rudolph, I don't know how much I can trust him.
Shout out. I'm honestly, I'm gonna take a leap of faith and say that's Kevin at Devi Royale, and shout out Kev for being awesome. Zach Wilson for life. One of those things too, where I genuinely, and Kevin said this, I genuinely just want to see Zach Wilson succeed at this point. So Boyd back in there with another start sit. You don't have to stop talking when I'm pulling up comments.
I'm sorry,
just bringing them up for the people. So Boyd with another start sit. Let's keep the dead air rolling. Zonovan Knight, Deontay Johnson, Deontay Foreman, Chris Moore, full PPR. I mean, Zach Wilson under center. That's kind of why I wanted to pull that comment up before I led into this. Zach Wilson under center, and as you said as well when we were answering the original questions, I think Zonovan Knight's going to see a incredible opportunity share. And it's against the Lions defense, obviously, that has looked much better against the run. And they've shut down Dalvin Cook and have really improved since that bye week 6. They've looked a lot better in all facets of defense, but specifically the run game. Obviously, secondary is still quite exploitable for Detroit. Otherwise, they wouldn't be allowing 28 points per game. But Zonovan Knight in a match where, for my money, the Jets have the best secondary in football. And the Lions have a phenomenal passing offense and a high-paced passing offense, but I don't think that they're going to have the success that they've had on an average basis against Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter. The list goes on. The defensive line, everything. The Jets have an incredible defense. I think this game script really lends to Zonovan Knight being a 25-touch guy, which against Detroit is still going to lead to positive things in your lineup. So he's the must start for me here. The next 3 options are really like, what are you looking for? I think Chris Moore is the absolute home run hitter that could just put up nothing. He's in a clear voluminous role, but I don't like trusting that necessarily. And Deontay with Chuba kind of eating into that workload, and the other Deontay with him being so inconsistent on the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, I think you have to go with the floor play here that also presents some ceiling. I'm going to play Deontay Foreman.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I definitely think Zonovan Knight, like you said, is probably the start. He's definitely better than Deontay Foreman, just because he's guaranteed to basically go to the rushing role. Well, not really. There's a lot of running back there.
Some pass catching work.
Yeah, he's actually getting pass catching work. Deontay Foreman's not getting that. And you're seeing like Raheem Blackshear really cut into both Hubbard and Foreman's production. I am not starting Deontay Foreman just because I feel like his floor is just as low as someone like Chris Moore's. And in PPR, I want the guy who's already kind of assumed to be getting the terrible game, well, the great game script for him, because you're going to be passing a lot. And there's just, it's a case of vacated targets don't exist, but you kind of do have to throw to someone. And we know that the Houston Texans are probably going to throw 40 times. Even if they're not playing catch up, like we saw against the Dallas Cowboys, who they were winning against. Even if that happens to be the case again, which it probably won't be a second week, someone like Chris Moore could legitimately go off just based on that kind of Brandon Cooks kind of workload. Doesn't matter if he gets a touchdown or not. He could just get 15 targets, catch 8 of them for 63 yards. And that's probably already going to beat out Deontay Foreman, even if he gets a touchdown. And it's probably going to beat out Deontay Johnson. The only thing that I like about Deontay Johnson is that when Kenny Pickett's not at quarterback, it seems like a wide receivers do a little better. I wanted Mitch Trubisky in for the sake of the Steelers wide receivers, but I also don't want to see him throw 3 picks. I mean, I got my Steelers Wu-Tang, hoodie on, so I want to see I want to see them actually do good in this game. But from a fantasy perspective, Mitch Trubisky so much better for the pass catchers than Kenny Pickett has been, just because Kenny Pickett plays it so much more safe, low A dot, with Mason Rudolph, I don't really know what to expect, but I'm with you on Zonovan Knight, and I'm going Chris Moore over Foreman, just because I see the range of outcomes.
I think you've kind of convinced me
in his favor a little more.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that was kind of tilting me a bit that I low-key forgot about was how close that Cowboys game was and how they kept passing the ball. So yeah, that was absolutely. You could see the Texans theoretically just Chris Moore beat out. I mean, all of these guys just on volume alone. Yeah, Themi's convinced me here. I'm going to lean with Chris Moore and Zonovan Knight.
All
Alejandro, one of the regulars, one of our boys up in this chat. Let's get these dubs. Absolutely, week 15. We all need to advance. I hope you guys, you might not be in the chat if you got your bye, and if you are, I'm glad you're hanging out with us. But obviously, this is when crunch time is the most vital. Isaiah Pacheco versus Houston. He needs us to start one. I should have. Isaiah Pacheco versus Houston. Latavius Murray versus Arizona. Zonovan Knight versus Detroit.
I think this is pretty clearly Pacheco.
Yep.
I
mean, 138.3 rushing yards per game. Incredible game script for garbage time, which is what he's been feasting on anyway. And then the last 2 weeks was actually starting to, and Jerick McKinnon even being, the RB1 overall last week, Pacheco was getting utilized in non-garbage time situations. Still would like to see some pass catching work here, but yeah, I do think it is. I think it's, don't overthink it. And it's not like a start your stud thing, but Pacheco in such a positive game script with a similar ceiling as Zonovan Knight against a worse, Knight has a worse matchup than Pacheco does. I think you have to just roll with the guy that is in a better offense with a great matchup.
Yep, absolutely. Murray does have a pretty good matchup. I was going to love him a lot more if Russell Wilson was starting.
I mean, Arizona's an absolute sieve to the running backs, but Houston is even more so. So especially to rushing production specifically, right? And that's obviously where Pacheco makes his money. Another regular, Charles. Charles, good to have you this week. Morning, guys. Happy week 15. Yeah, I hope so. Playoff dubs are coming. He's in a deep PPR league. He has Stevenson and Josh Reynolds in the flex. If Steven doesn't go, his pivots in that range would then be Kendrick Bourne, Matt Breida, Cameron Brate. Hoping not to have to choose, but who would you go with out of those 3 options in PPR?
I think I'm leaning not great options to have, obviously, but it is a deep league, like you said. I'm leaning Kendrick Bourne. You're facing what is possibly the worst secondary in the entire league. Mac Jones is sort of a Ryan Tannehill in that he doesn't throw a lot. He's a Zach Wilson in that he doesn't throw a lot. He's another quarterback that I can name that doesn't throw a lot. But Kendrick Bourne, caught all 5 of his targets last week for 47 yards in a game that they were, it was a little close at first, and then they started winning. With probably the top 2 wide receivers missing time, I think that's pretty good for Kendrick Bourne. Probably the safest play out of all of these guys. I don't really expect anything out of Breida or Cameron Brate.
No,
it's a roll of the dice at this point, but I think Bourne's very safe here.
Yeah, I do think it's Kendrick Bourne with those injuries to the Patriots offense, which was another thing that I was scrolling for player news to make sure that, absolutely the top 2 Patriots receivers, Jacoby Myers, Devontae Parker. I like Kendrick Bourne here. I think Matt Breida is kind of more of what you would call like a DFS start throw, whereas if Saquon Barkley goes down, yes, his rostership would be like incredibly low in a DFS tournament, in a big tourney like that. So I think Matt Breida is kind of one of those plays. Just if the lead back goes down, now you have somebody that's not rostered by anybody else. But other than that, when a pivot like Kendrick Bourne would probably offer you both the most playing time, so the most upside for volume in the first place, and then arguably similar production, unless Breida kind of sneaks into the end zone on one of those substitution plays. But I could say the same thing for Bourne.
Yeah, and it's a terrible matchup against Washington.
Yeah, Derek Stingley is a dog. Absolutely. I mean, that's just a fact. T. Higgins is in your lineup this week. Don't have any better flexes. I mean, he got a full practice in. It was limited participant. They didn't remove the questionable tag yet. He is questionable leading into the game, but a full practice is obviously encouraging. You can't trust Zach Taylor for as far as you can throw him with these questionable tags and these 1 snap limitations. It's happened twice with T. Higgins. It's really tough. But I think you've kind of already said it, delusional Tanner, in that you don't have any better flexes, and there's a lot of so-called pivots that I'm very much willing to risk the biscuit with T. Higgins in my lineup for this week.
I think that's fair. It's not fun in the playoffs to try to rely on that again. I'm sure a lot of people got eliminated just because they ended up starting him, like I did in a couple of leagues. If you want to list out like your flex options, like maybe we will find someone who
Yeah,
is a better
that's a fact.
pivot, like not even a pivot, just a better start. But yeah, if you don't personally believe you have any better flexes, then I'll basically trust you. But if you do want to list them, like I'll look through
Like,
them.
so I'll tell you even one of mine as I scroll down and find the next question. But one of mine that I did is like I had T Higgins and Juju. Even in a bad perceived matchup, obviously I just put Juju in and said I'm not going to worry about it. But then there was one where it's like T Higgins or Josh Palmer, and I was like, fuck it. Like I would rather risk it. Like I would. So that's legitimately where like a wide receiver 3, if that's the pivot, I kind of want to risk it for Higgins top 12 upside. Um, yeah, Constantine up in here. 6-point passing TD. Lawrence versus Dallas or Fields versus Philly. I'm going with Trevor Lawrence.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I think I'm going to Trevor Lawrence. But also, I want to say that I don't think that it's much of a gap. 6-point passing TD is what makes me kind of want to lean Trevor Lawrence. I think Dallas is going to score very easily. I know Dallas's defense is a terrifying monster, but I have confidence in what Lawrence has looked like lately. Fields isn't going to pass for a touchdown. Let's say that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's
So,
definitely possible, but it wouldn't be
yeah, I
my
mean,
first
I wouldn't
expectation.
be surprised. Like honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if all of Fields' production comes from rushing, which is certainly it can match or surpass Trevor Lawrence throwing for 220 and 2 touchdowns without a doubt. I think both obviously knowing how equally terrible the matchups are, I think I'm going to lean Trevor Lawrence just slightly.
Okay, I I definitely think Lawrence is a safer play in 6-point passing touchdown because, like you said, even with limited yards and maybe a touchdown or two, I think he definitely offers more safety. But I think Fields gets a very good matchup because I've talked about Philly a lot in my teaser article, and really their big weakness defensively is against the run. And you can look at a lot of stats that kind of indicate that they're a little worse against the run. For QB rushing in true matchup rank, they're 15th, so a little above average. But in terms of like DVOA, EPA, you got to run against them, and Fields is the rushing quarterback.
Right? Yeah.
So I think if Fields were to get like 125 passing yards and a pick, and then he were to run for like 120 yards, which isn't that easy, even against a great matchup, but like 120 rushing yards and a touchdown, that's probably worth more than Lawrence maybe. And then if he does throw for a
Well, it
touchdown or
would
throw
be
for more yards,
that's
maybe
pretty
maybe
easy
that
math,
maybe that's too
actually. That
optimistic.
you're talking obviously he gets the 18 points of rushing production alone, and if you're playing 0.04 yards for passing with 120, he would get 6-8.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean,
it might be about
yeah.
equal.
No, so like yeah, I mean, you just kind of convinced me. There you go. There's your
I guess
24
there's more
points.
safety with Lawrence despite the terrible matchup.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and I
just
think that's
because,
kind of where my heart goes. And I mean, I should have maybe prefaced with the strategy, but a lot of it doesn't necessarily even have to do with matchup, but it has to do with the time of year that we're in. I'm definitely looking for risk aversion at this time. Like I don't want to play a bunch of risk. I where I need the upside in matchups where I'm the 8th seed playing against the 1 and projected to lose by 50. Yeah, I'm throwing darts, but there's also the thing where it's like I've made the playoffs. Like I'm okay with letting variance take over and just playing safety.
yep, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, a bit of a bit of, I guess, personal preference there for sure. Yeah, I mean, the Muth versus Dulcich question, I think that's valid, but I'm definitely in Dulcich there. Just had to touch back on that. Tim up in here asking defense questions. I'm the defense whisperer. Um, I think it's Saints D versus Atlanta. I think that's very, very easy. As good as Dallas's defense is, and they're obviously a top 10 fantasy defense, regardless of matchup that they play, and they're putting up those points in great averages. You have a getting healthy Saints defense against Desmond Ritter in his first start in the NFL, coming off bye or not. I think Saints are going to have their way with the Atlanta offense. And I want the opportunity of what should obviously, like, I don't think Desmond Ritter is going to have 0 turnovers. Let's put it that way.
Okay, fair.
I,
Not
I
big
could
enough
see
on
Trevor
defense
Lawrence
just to
having
argue
0
against
turnovers,
you. Yeah.
you know? Yeah, and that's what's kind of shitty about playing like defense in fantasy, and I get why people don't like it. I personally do like it, and I love IDP even. But I like defenses in fantasy, but I get why people don't. You're not playing defenses; you're playing offenses. Like it's I would much rather play the defense that plays Desmond Ritter than the defense that plays Trevor Lawrence, and that has nothing to do with the defensive units themselves. So that's why I get like why people don't like it, but I do like it. I think there's some strategy in it. Boyd says the Chris Moore love is what he needed. Yeah, the love came from Themi, and he certainly convinced me. I think he's got a bunch of fantastic points. Boyd's heading to lunch with his girl. You have a fantastic day, my brother.
Enjoy, Boyd.
Constantine with his standard league questions. These ones always send me for a tizzy. So pick one: Stevenson, Pierre Strong, Dylan, Fournette. I'm projected to lose after Allen went off last night, so he needs upside. I think even in standard league, the upside is with Ramondre Stevenson in a vacuum if he's healthy, but he's not. And you don't know until the last moment. And then your only pivot really there is Pierre Strong. I don't actually hate Pierre Strong as a pivot, but with AJ Dillon looking much more serviceable the last 2 weeks, I think Dillon's the safe play with similar upside. We have to go all upside here.
That's true. Does Dillon really offer the same upside
in a standard league as Ramondre? Because you're just talking about yardage totals and touchdown opportunity.
I guess that, yeah.
Same as Pierre Strong, because Pierre Strong in a committee, regardless with Kevin Harris, for better or for worse, I don't think he's just going to automatically see an 80% opportunity share like Ramondre was seeing. Talking about vacated targets, vacated opportunities aren't really a thing either. Part of the reason that those opportunities get allocated to that player is because they can keep the ball moving with them. When you can't get first downs, you get less touches.
Yeah, you bring up good points. I didn't realize Pierre Strong only had 5 rushes last week. He was just uber efficient on them, 70 yards and a touchdown. And then, 20 yards receiving. You don't really care about the receptions, although you want to see that he's getting at least targeted.
Yes.
Just because at least the yards count for you. Yeah, that's tough. Wow. I mean, I'm looking at where Dillon really went off. He did it against the terrible Chicago Bears run defense last week. The week before, he got a touchdown and 64 yards against the bad Philly run defense. The Rams in true matchup rank, 21st against running backs, but he does get the opportunity for sure, even if he's like a little bad on it. That's really tough. I mean, I might just have to go with what you said, Matt. Even though Pierre Strong was kind of my guy, if Stevenson is ruled out.
So I think it's. I mean, I think you can sit Fournette here. Let's just get that out of the way. I think you could sit Fournette. Here's the thing, because it's the strategy play of the pivot in the first place, where you would have to obviously lock Dillon into your lineup, or you have a viable pivot with Pierre Strong. So if Ramondre Stevenson goes, even with limited, would you start him over AJ Dillon? Obviously, the answer is yes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that wasn't rhetorical. I mean, yeah. So with that said, you would obviously start Ramondre Stevenson over AJ Dillon, even if he was limited in practice. If he goes, you want him in your lineup over AJ against the Raiders. So playing that strategy where you need the ultimate upside, keep Ramondre in your offense. If he doesn't go, Pierre Strong's the pivot.
Okay.
Right, because you want Ramondre over Dillon. You're talking about all upside here.
For sure.
Allen put him in a big hole. Yeah, I think that's the strategy that you have to play. And I mean, it might have taken us a roundabout way of getting there, but I think that's the strategy that you have to play. It might be Dillon a little bit in just a vacuum over Pierre Strong, but you would have to want Ramondre in that lineup instead if they clear him to play that game.
So the risk is baked into that, basically.
Exactly. And then Pierre obviously has 5-touch, 75-yard, 1 touchdown upside. We saw it. So, good morning to Mega Brick. Tough question. He's in his quarterfinals this week. Somebody bumped him, but I'll hop to his question first. Should I stick with Lawrence at QB? My opponent is starting Dallas defense. That's always an interesting one that comes up, especially when people are trying to talk strategy for start-sit lineups. I never concern myself that much with things like that. I mean, because especially if Lawrence goes off, on your bench and Dallas somehow gives them negative points or 2 points or 3 points or whatever, then like you would feel worse about not starting him. If you start him, that's good for your opponent starting Dallas defense. If you have the confidence to start Lawrence, which I do in many spots this week, I'm without Kyler Murray, specifically went to Lawrence. I had the options of Ryan Tannehill, Taylor Heineke, so on and so forth. I prefer Trevor Lawrence in that. And I think he's a top 12 quarterback this week, even though a low end one. And that said, if he puts up those numbers that I am projecting and having enough safety confidence in starting him, then Dallas will have low defensive numbers. So that's actually good for your starting lineup.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways for both players to go off at the same time or to do bad at the same time. The Dallas defense could return 2 fumbles from Travis Etienne for a touchdown, or they can block kicks, or they can sack Lawrence.
Yes.
But Lawrence doesn't lose the points in most leagues, at least, for getting
Right.
sacked. Or Lawrence could have a bad game, but Travis Etienne could run for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Probably not going to happen, but there's ways for scores to happen without Lawrence being involved in them, and there's ways for the Dallas defense to score points while Lawrence also has a good week.
Yep.
So I mean, if the Dallas defense does just shut down Lawrence, you kind of do lose on both sides, but it's I don't think you bench one just because someone's starting the other. It's like a quarterback wide receiver kind of thing. Like let the rest of your lineup do the talking, and don't like fret about this one player on your team.
Right. So this one's really interesting, especially considering the half PPR mark here. Dalton Schultz or Jeff Driscoll. I know there's a lot of high upside, like, hope in Jeff Driscoll in a playoff matchup where, maybe we get a Taysom Hill light kind of week, rushes in a touchdown and throws for 30 yards and catches 1 pass. But man, like, what you're getting with Jeff Driscoll. Guys like Jeff Driscoll, guys like Taysom Hill are really guys that they hurt your lineup. Their floor hurts your lineup more than it helps it, because so much of it is attached to like, well, tight ends don't really score points this way. So there's a presumed like psychological upside where like, well, you can't get rushing yards anywhere else. Well, you're also not getting receptions, like, which are worth points, is even in half PPR, right? Like, so if Jeff Driscoll passes for 30 yards, rushes for 30 yards, that's 6 points. If Dalton Schultz has 5 catches for 25, that's 7.5. I mean, in half PPR, it would be, 6.5, but that's still more, right? And it's an incredibly low yardage floor. All he needs to do is see the volume, which is essentially baked in when it comes to Dalton Schultz. A very respectable, close to 20% target share. He is the secondary volume option on that offense, with Michael Gallup kind of serving as the tertiary. I think it's more so the low end tight end 1 guys, the tight end 15-ish guys with upside that I would consider Jeff Driscoll over. Dalton Schultz is a bona fide top 6 every week option. That's not the pivot that I'm comfortable making in this position.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, your math was a little wrong. I think you said pass for 30 yards and rush for 30 yards. That's like in most leagues, what, 4 point?
Oh, right. Exactly. Yeah. 0.04.
points,
So I was even
yeah.
lower. Yeah. Yeah. Word. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
if he goes off, a lot of people on Twitter are going to look like geniuses. But
sure.
Anyone can technically go off. And
Are
just
they,
because,
with the tight end position the way that it is? Evan Ingram was the number 1 scoring fantasy asset last week.
Well, Clay called that. So, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, well,
he called a big game for him. But anyway, yes, you're right. That Schultz is the type of tight end that you really can't start anyone over, except for if you somehow have like a Travis Kelce, which, you wouldn't be asking that question anyway. Yeah, the Jeff Driscoll kind of thing, it's definitely a nice little, like cheat code in a way. If you're like in a deep dynasty league, and you have you're running thin on options, I don't think you start him over Schultz at all.
So the pivot for T. Higgins, just rolling back, was Zonovan Knight. It's T. Higgins or Zonovan Knight then in PPR.
Oh, so that's when he said he didn't have any better flexes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's actually a little tougher now. I think
he has Rachaad White, Higgins, and Bam Knight as his choices.
Yeah, I'm probably not starting Rachaad White. this week over T. Higgins. I think.
it's still Higgins for me. I think that's where, I was speaking of risk aversion, but he did get a full practice in. Like, I think I have to go with Higgins here. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I guess so. Okay.
Yeah. Isaiah has another Evan Ingram full PPR, Jawan Johnson full PPR. Now, Juwan's been questionable and obviously was on a touchdown heater that was upholding his tight end one upside, a touchdown heater that, fell off and kind of led to absolutely nothing. Evan Ingram is my bust of the week this week against a very, very tough matchup in Dallas's defense. I do think one thing that they'll be able to do, obviously, is limit the lower options. I think Christian Kirk can get a high volume game. Zay Jones catches a touchdown. Travis Etienne obviously can get some work in, and Trevor Lawrence. I mean, I already said it, like above 220, 2 touchdowns roughly. Evan Ingram is the odd man out for me in that defense. I don't think Juwan Johnson is necessarily a viable pivot. He's also questionable to lead in. One of the lower player news that we didn't really get into. Both questionable, both expected to play, but also have neither are rather Troutman and Juwan Johnson are both questionable. So both Saints starting tight ends are questionable. Both expected to play, but neither have had a full participant in practice. I'm not really feeling great about the Saints in this particular matchup either. Even though it is Atlanta, it's just, Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara are the only real people in that offense that I'm willing to start. I still think you have to go Evan Ingram over Juwan Johnson.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Juwan Johnson's like absolute ceiling only comes from touchdowns. Yeah. And if you want to bank on that, that's
at least Ingram's like their slot receiver. Like,
yeah, and I don't think the upside's high enough for Juwan Johnson unless he gets like one of those 2 touchdown games again. At least with Evan Ingram, you're kind of getting that solid floor. He might probably get like 7-8 targets. I think that's better than what Juwan Johnson's going to get you in most cases.
Yeah, word. Mega Brick back in, full PPR, start 3, DJ Moore, Deontay Foreman, DJ Chark, Alan Lazard, Christian Kirk, Jerry Jeudy. My starting 2 running backs, Josh Jacobs and Joe Mixon. Absolutely, even with the questionable tag on Jacobs, absolutely Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon there. Yep. These are flex questions for sure. You're not making a pivot off that. DJ Chark is a no for me here. I think it's Christian Kirk and Jerry Jeudy, so we have to think of a third. We're benching probably DJ Chark, Alan Lazard, DJ Moore, Deontay Foreman.
You're benching Alan Lazard?
No. I'm saying we have to choose between the back 4 because Mixon and Jacobs are locked. And for me, it's Christian Kirk and Jerry Jeudy should be locked as well.
Okay. You don't like DJ Moore?
Not over Christian Kirk or Jerry Jeudy.
Okay. I think Alan Lazard provides the most upside then.
So what I would say for me, the way that I'm looking at it is I like to do my process of elimination. It's a start 1, DJ Moore, Deontay Foreman, DJ Chark, Alan Lazard.
Yeah. And I think you can remove Foreman from that basically.
Yeah. So I think Alan Lazard does present the most upside as well.
Yeah. Because what does Deontay Foreman give you that DJ Moore doesn't? Okay. He can run into the end zone. He dominates the red zone rushing attempts, I think, especially in the 5. Maybe it's a little more split inside the 5. I was looking at it a few days ago. Probably not going to be that many scoring opportunities. The over-under is what, like 37 and a half. Mm-hmm. They're favored only by 3. It's probably not going to be like the absolute best game script for him. And like we were talking about before, Chuba Hubbard, Raheem Blackshear, they're stealing targets. Not that Deontay Foreman was getting many in the first place. And then, DJ Chark doesn't provide like the biggest upside this week. Alan Lazard has a pretty good amount of safety. It's like Christian Watson, he's scoring on very limited targets. And he'll probably have a great game this week. I love him. And I know a lot of the guys in Broto love him too this week. But Alan Lazard's still basically the wide receiver 1 in that offense against a terrible, pass defense. Like you said, the worst in the league. So I think probably the best safety and upside of those remaining 4 options by far.
Agreed. Isaiah Simpson starting Demont or Deontay over Higgins with the questionable tag. That's full PPR. I think I'm going to go with Higgins.
Still. Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of riding it into the darkness at this point. I would start Montgomery over Deontay Johnson.
Mhm.
So I think if you're comfortable starting Montgomery over Higgins, you specifically, then I wouldn't be angry at that, and nor would I be angry if Isaiah decided to do that. But I think Higgins presents equal upside. Obviously a much lower floor. The safety option is Montgomery easily against a Eagles defense that has proven to be a little more susceptible against the run. He should see a decent amount of check down targets, which is something that Justin Fields has been finally getting used to. I might be talking myself into the fact that you might just have to take Montgomery because the floor is so much higher than Zach Taylor pulling Higgins after 5 snaps. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
that
that's a
would.
good pivot.
I think David Montgomery
I
is
think that's
my.
where I draw the line.
Yeah, I would probably start him
Yeah,
over Higgins. I know it's the type of play that can backfire on you because if Higgins is actually healthy enough to play like almost
then
a full game,
obviously,
then it
yeah,
kind
then
of does
obviously
suck
it's
because he could go for 140 in a touchdown and you wouldn't, bat an eye. But I think with Montgomery, you're basically getting close to 10 in the full PPR. Game script
agreed.
doesn't really like deter them. Like I can probably pull up the coaching tendencies right now in the app, and like tell you exactly how often they run when they're trailing. There's no Khalil Herbert, so it's like they have a good matchup. They're probably be running a ton. The app is not loading on me because I have 70,000 tabs open. But yeah, I would go with
Yeah,
Montgomery.
I think so
If
as
you
well.
absolutely
I
need
think that's
like
the
20 points, you go Higgins.
right. Yeah, exact. Yep, perfect. If you're down in your matchup from a Saturday or a Thursday game, I think Higgins is really, the dart throw that could present you with wide receiver one upside, not overall, but top 12 this week. And Montgomery is still probably a serviceable low end RB1, high end RB2, certainly a safer floor. So if you're just rolling in with similar projections or expected to beat your opponent, I think Montgomery is the play, knowing that the rug can get ripped out from under T. Higgins' production in a moment's notice. Megabrick saying he doesn't think he can start Lawrence. Yeah, I don't think so either. Not with that option anyway. It doesn't have Lamar this week from DJ Sue Spence V1. So should he start Goff or Lawrence? Well, I'll take this one easily and say that Goff is one of my bust picks this week. Playing the Jets, I do think that the Lions still have a very good opportunity of winning this game and doing so on the ground. It's going to be really hard for I think Goff to put up those, as good of a season as he's having. He's still a mid-range QB2 with QB1 upside, or I should say a high-end QB2 with QB1 upside, right around QB 14 points per game, still just 17.4 points per game, depending if you play 6 or 4-point passing TD. But against a defense that has a massive negative differential in points over average to the quarterback position, you're expecting a significant drop in that production, and that's not really where I feel comfortable when I have a pivot like Trevor Lawrence, who has been a top 12 quarterback in points per game.
I agree with you there. Yeah, like you said, Goff really could just run the ball in this game. Lawrence doesn't necessarily have that luxury. It's not probable that he's going to do that. As much as I'm like much lower on Lawrence than you, I think you also go Lawrence pretty easily there.
Michael Wozniak needs help in his running back department. Needs two. His options are Zeke, Zonovan Knight, Rashad White, and Stevenson if he plays. I think you have to go with Zeke and Zonovan Knight here.
What time do the Patriots play? I guess that's an afternoon game, so it kind of
Yeah,
messes you
it's
up
the
there.
late game.
So your only
Exactly.
pivot would be Rashad White in that case.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't love that.
And I think we had already agreed to start Zonovan over Rashad White.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
I think that's pretty
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Zeke is shout out Tim Petropoulos, brother, said this earlier, and it's one of those things that annoyed the ever living hell out of me for so long when people kept comparing backfields to the Mark Ingram and Evan Kamara situation, where I was like, do you really expect two running backs to one of them to lead the league in touchdowns and the other one to lead all running backs in receiving production? Because that's just not going to happen. Well, guess what's been happening over the last 4 weeks? Ezekiel Elliott leads all running backs in rushing touchdowns, and Pollard's been leading, except for Austin Eckler, but is essentially one of the best receiving running backs in the league, and obviously a big explosive just between the tackles and stretch run player as well. So yeah, you have to start Zeke. As crazy as it is, we obviously didn't really think that it was going to happen with his trajectory throughout the middle of the season, but he is 100% a must start option at this point. And against the Jaguars defense, who just allowed Derrick Henry to baby slap them around, like, yeah. I think Zeke is a great play here. I think both running backs are a great play in that Dallas offense against the Jaguars. Now, solo night. Darren Waller or Evan Ingram at tight end. I'm going to call him out for spelling Evan Ingram's name wrong, and then I'm going to tell him that it's probably still Evan Ingram. Like, man, what have we really seen from Darren Waller at all? Injury or not, obviously was not putting up overly serviceable numbers even when he was healthy against the Patriots defense, who is, good and negative points over average essentially everywhere. He's not a matchup that I'm super excited against, especially with just like the Raiders are just so dysfunctional. Inserting everybody in the same game back into the first lineup too, you're not really sure how targets are going to get allocated around. We've seen guys like Mac Hollins pull huge target shares with Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller on the field. We've obviously seen Devontae Adams have 17 targets with both of them on the field as well, and everybody else see 4 targets. So it's not a matchup I'm super excited about. I do think that he probably has similar upside, and Ingram might even have a little bit more volume on his plate.
Yeah, neither of these options are great, but like you said, Ingram's basically has the role that we know he has, whereas Waller getting activated off the IR, you don't want to like really take that risk immediately. Just not worth it right now.
Yeah, Grumpy Panda Bear brings in a good position. Zeke's been good for 16 points per game during that little stretch that I was talking about, and obviously he is as well starting Zeke. I think that's a good call, fellas. I'm glad you guys are helping each other out in the chat because sometimes I can't get up to it quick enough. You guys are a machine up in here. Mike Wozniak helping back in with full PPR options are. Oh wait, so okay, let's go back up. Need to Zeke, Zonovan, Rashad, and then he's also got
2 wide receivers.
Jones, Judah, yeah, and then Zay Jones, Zay
Jerry
Jonas,
Jeudy.
Jerry Jeudy, Marquise Brown. Jerry Jeudy?
And Marquise Brown.
Yeah, exactly. Even with Colt McCoy. I actually think Colt McCoy probably helps Marquise a little bit more than it does DeAndre, to be honest.
Well, you think he's like the possession guy in this case? Or you think that he's just going to get more targets?
Yeah, no, I mean, I no, DeAndre is the possession guy. DeAndre is the lower A dot guy in this offense.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that Colt McCoy is a serviceable enough backup that we can expect similar passing volume, obviously not similar passing efficiency as Kyler Murray. But I think him being under center kind of helps. Marquise Brown certifiable 10 targets, DeAndre Hopkins certifiable, but I think it kind of helps Marquise ceiling. There's just going to be a little bit more, hopefully a little bit more of an open playbook where he's the featured guy with DeAndre getting double covered.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I was going to choose them regardless.
Yeah,
I also don't think Kyler Murray was that great as like a passer. I'm trying to pull up the sleepers and bust article from last week. I had Kyler Murray as my bust. Obviously, I can't like take a win on that because he got injured, so we don't know what would have happened. But I think his true throw value was awful.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, he's 24th in DVOA, 21st in EPA. He has the 33rd lowest true throw value. There's only 32 starting quarterbacks at any given time, so that's not exactly ideal.
You're not kidding. Yeah. Big Will in here. Yeah, and I mean, I guess to my point too, I guess that Colt McCoy being under center isn't necessarily the function. Obviously, Nuke is going to get the double team. I'm just saying, with Colt McCoy being Colt McCoy, he's not going to be as confident to still throw into that double team as Kyler would be, which kind of just opens up for single reads to Hollywood. Was kind of the point that I was trying to make.
Okay.
Big Will saying he needs a flex and half PPR: Hollywood Brown, George Pickens, Drake London, Cam Akers. I think Hollywood Brown over everybody.
Yep. And Cam Akers is like a big sleeper this week.
I think he's a home run touchdown hitter for sure.
Yeah, but I think even his like absolute ceiling for Cam Akers, like a great game, I think Hollywood Brown beats that out in most cases in half PPR. Like just from a little bit of volume alone. from a rushing standpoint, you need a lot to overcome a wide receiver in a flex.
Yeah, facts. Charles Kearney, full PPR, got to start 2 wide receivers and a flex. Garrett Wilson, now with Zach Wilson under center. Hollywood, now with Colt McCoy under center. 8.2 points per game, Mike Evans, Jahan Dotson, Antonio Gibson, DJ Chark, MVS. 2 wide receivers here. For me, it's going to be even with Zach Wilson because I think a lot of people are ignoring that Garrett Wilson had a wide receiver 22 and wide receiver 15 finish the 2 games before Wilson got benched. I think Garrett Wilson and Hollywood. Gibson,
Yeah.
sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
Mike
I think
Evans gets a great matchup, but yeah, I don't know how you fit Mike Evans into this. Like Garrett Wilson provides probably the same upside, and like maybe the same floor, which is like nothing.
which is nothing.
And it's like, do you trust a younger quarterback over like a 90-year-old Tom Brady? I don't want to keep making the same mistake over and over again and, like not trusting Brady anymore. But I think like finally we can say, at least for this season, it's just not good.
Yeah, 100%.
And, Jahan Dotson, I wouldn't start him over Garrett Wilson. Like, yeah, he's, a touchdown play every week. But there, like no volume basically.
Yeah, and I mean, I should say too, like Hollywood has an absolutely terrible matchup with Denver. It's going to be rough, but I still think he's the play here. Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument for Mike Evans. I think you have it in the right order, by the way, Carls. I genuinely think this is the order that I would start these players. With that said, I think Mike Evans is the closest option for either. And then it's flip a coin between Hollywood and Garrett Wilson because I still think they present better options, especially in playoff matchups. We're talking floor and ceiling and obviously much better ceilings than Antonio Gibson, Jahan Dotson, DJ Chark in a absolutely horrendous matchup, which is worse than Hollywood's even in true matchup rank. And obviously MVS, which again, not a good matchup against Texans and doesn't have a solidified opportunity share. Mike Evans is going to be the obvious pivot here, but I'm not sure, like Themi said, I'm just not sure that I can fit him in over those guys.
I guess you put him in at the flex then, right? Because do you start Dotson, Gibson, Chark, MVS
exactly.
over Mike Evans?
Yeah. It's Garrett Wilson, Hollywood, and Mike Evans. Yeah, I think that's exactly the right order.
We know that DJ Chark we're not like big on because we're not big on the Lions passing offense this week. Maybe he gets like the good corner matchup while like, Amon-Ra or Jameson, well, if Jameson plays much, is going to get like Sauce Gardner. Antonio Gibson's just not that reliable anymore. He's probably good for like 7 points as like a floor play, but they just want to feed Brian Robinson, and then they're going to throw to Terry McLaurin. Antonio Gibson's not getting like amazing receiving value, although it's better than nothing. And then MVS just doesn't have like a clear role in the offense. It's like it's Juju, it's Kelsey, and then it's maybe him sometimes.
Yeah.
So Mike Evans, at least he's the wide receiver one or
Juju,
two.
Kelsey, it's Jerick McKinnon, it's Isaiah Pacheco, it's yeah, exactly. It's Noah Gray and Jordy Fortson.
I have money on Noah Gray to catch a touchdown today. By the way,
I love that prop. No, I hate it.
Yeah, you hate it.
Full PPR from Trey. Hopkins or Christian Watson. Call me crazy, but I don't trust the Cards without Kyler. Cards without Kyler. Cards against the Broncos. Hopkins getting doubles. Safety help, obviously, from Simmons and probably the shadow from Surtain. I think I'm going to go with Christian Watson.
Yeah. Christian Watson might be the best. Christian Watson has the ability to finish as the wide receiver one this week.
Yes.
Like that's how good this matchup is.
Yes. And I mean, the volume has kind of come alongside some of that unsustainable touchdown production as well, right? Like the volume has increased and has been pretty sustainable alongside his incredible scoring. So yeah, I mean, that one's pretty easy. And we did touch on the Cardinals offense a lot, so we don't need to beat that one into the ground. Thanks for tuning in, Mega Brick. He loves the show. Yeah, it helps us every week too, man. This whole getting the thoughts out helps me go set my own lineups as soon as we're done. So don't stop coming in. We appreciate the love. Fabian needs a flex spot. Stuck between Jerry Jeudy or Deontay Johnson. Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson just doesn't, you know, he probably doesn't get as much volume. I mean, he probably gets as much volume as Jerry Jeudy does. But even in a bad matchup with a backup quarterback, I mean, that's basically what Deontay Johnson's situation is. Just with an easier sort of, matchup.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're going with Jerry Jeudy. I mean, he went off last week, and it seems like they're finally he's finally getting into it.
I'm
I
always
think you
worried
guys were
about
talking on
chasing
the
points.
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, I think you guys were talking on the podcast this week about how, he was looking like pretty good. He was just like these like stupid mistakes, like running into people, like it just wasn't working out for him. And then now it finally like all hit like like a ton of bricks. So I think like going forward, Jerry Jeudy is gonna be a lot better of a wide receiver just because he is a great wide receiver. It's really hard to trust Deontay Johnson when like someone like George Pickens might just go off instead of him.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not overly trusting any Steelers receivers, although you did mention that they have been slightly better as far as a fantasy production standpoint goes with Mitch Trubisky under center. It's not really a matchup that I'm entirely confident in. Obviously, we know a downgrade to the pass catching options, but no Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, target hog. Like you said, it's kind of just all clicking, and he's angry about it, and he's confident, and he wants the effing ball.
Yeah.
Trey in here saying, do I risk waiting to see if Stevenson plays or play it safe and keep Bam Knight in? I think we touched on that quite a bit as well. I would be okay. I mean, I would be okay. Like, check your waiver wires, I guess, to see if you could still add Pierre Strong last second. I would be okay with risking it for Stevenson, but I think the safe play is playing Knight, and I think he's going to have a very serviceable week as a high end RB2, probably top 16 at the position in point scoring. The smart play for a playoff push in this position is probably just to play White and take the points, or Knight and take the points.
Yeah, I think so.
I was saying White because the next question is from Bick, and he's asking full PPR, Rashad White or Travis Etienne.
I'm going Travis Etienne there.
I am as well, and Bick pulling at my heartstrings because he knows these are two of my favorite players in the NFL in general, two of the guys that I was very, very high on above consensus coming out of college. Obviously had Etienne as my RB1 of that class. Yes, above Najee Harris, wasn't a question for me. So this one's tough just as a fan bias standpoint, but I think the obvious answer is Travis Etienne in a matchup that I do think the Jaguars are going to surprise Dallas's positive, or well, negative, but they're very good true matchup rank against the position. And Cincinnati is no joke against the run either. So that's where I worry about Rashad a little bit. Take a shot on Zach Wilson or Taylor Heineke, or stick with Ryan Tannehill. I'm going to play Ryan Tannehill against the Chargers this week instead of those two options. And I was mentioning at the very top of the hour that I actually had that option, that pivot.
Really? I would go with Heineke there.
You're going to go with Heineke against the Giants?
Yeah. I mean, there's absolutely no reason to pass against the Chargers when you know that they're one of the worst run defenses in the world, and you have Derrick
Henry. Until you realize that the Titans are the worst secondary in the world, and Justin Herbert's going to throw for 380 and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
I'm very not really going to have a choice but to
I'm
pass.
very high on like the passing from the Chargers standpoint, and that could make it like definitely a shootout kind of thing. But the reason I loved Ryan Tannehill last week was because you also had an equally great matchup over there, where the Jaguars, like you can throw against them pretty well. Not that the Chargers are like elite against the pass.
No, certainly not. No Derwin James as well.
Yeah, I don't think like trusting Ryan Tannehill for a second week in a row when he did fine, like definitely above expectations, above projections, in like almost perfect situation. What up, Hanson? No Treylon Burks again. It's gonna be Chig, the legend.
Yeah, nice Chig
legend.
Game. He's a legend.
I'd rather just take a shot on Heineke. I think like their floors are probably about the same.
There's a revolving carousel right now of who the rookie tight end one in Dynasty is, and it's you can't argue with any of them, right? Like every single time Greg Dawson
Daniel Bellinger, the ball,
it's him. Yeah, I mean Belly's early in the season Belly was looking better than all of them, and then obviously Isaiah Likely's a big Twitter darling, and yeah, it's a phenomenal tight end rookie classes. I think Themi's touched a little bit on social media as well. It's definitely very, very impressive class, and I do like Chig in this matchup genuinely. That said, I'm not necessarily convinced, but I'm not mad at your Heineke take. I think I'm sticking with Tannehill here, because I mean, for the reason that I said, I kind of see it being a shootout and the run game getting utilized a little bit less with the Chargers. Like if the Chargers win the coin toss, that's it. They're up 7-0.
That's fair. I understand the theory behind Tannehill for sure.
Start 1, ETN, Connor, Pacheco, full PPR.
I think we're going Pacheco here.
Yeah, I know. I hate it so much, but it's true. It's true. Yeah, we're going Pacheco to a team that concedes 138 rushing yards per game and what will obviously be some garbage time against Houston and Kansas City. The area that he thrives in, a place that he's been thriving for 4 consecutive weeks. I think you have to go with Pacheco. ETN does have a worse perceivable matchup and can certainly outscore, and ask could Connor, sure, but could certainly outscore all of these options, if not even double their point total, just based on the player that he is. But you take the safety and the upside with Pacheco in what is conceived to be a very excellent matchup. Mm-hmm. I went really radio there. Grumpy Panty, I think it's really interesting to see Zeke getting more targets the past few weeks. Yeah, interesting and annoying, but you're right. I still want to see Pollard get all the. Yeah.
Oh, wow,
he's definitely been getting a few more. Yeah, but I do want Pollard obviously to get those touches. Although Pollard has had a nose for the end zone like nobody else over the last 6 weeks. Standard, would you play Dillon or Fournette over Watson, Judy, Mike Will, or CeeDee Lamb? I would not. Literally over any of those options, even though it's standard.
Even in PPR, I wouldn't. I will actually guess standard would favor the running back more, but no, I wouldn't.
Exactly. Standard does usually, because you're just, again, yardage totals and expected touchdowns. I legitimately think Watson more yardage than both. Judy more. Yeah. No, I wouldn't. That was easy. I snagged Waller off waivers just to be petty today. Yeah, that's a good call. I'm still not. I'm still not necessarily starting Waller in this matchup, but obviously the tight end landscape, it has to be said, it is what it is. Tight end 12 is equal to tight end 32. They're essentially the same thing. You can literally get tight end 1 upside from any of the 32 starting tight ends in the NFL, other than, unless you have Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, you don't have a huge positional difference. So you lock in your top 6 and everybody else is a coin flip. John Mueller asking full PPR bonus for rushing and receiving first downs. That's always adds a little wrench in the system. Need 2 flexes. Deontay Foreman. These spelling, John, you're going to kill me. Deontay Foreman, Ramondre Stevenson, Mike Evans, Curtis Samuel, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore. Work from bottom up and say I can bench Elijah Moore and Josh Palmer without hesitation. So Mike Evans over Deontay Foreman, would you hate that? I don't think so. I think that's the right move there.
Yeah. I don't know if Deontay Foreman is like the third down back in that backfield. That's the only issue, because it's like if he keeps getting like short.
No,
I feel like he's more of the early down back. I don't want to like
short yardage on third down.
Yeah, but I just based on like what I've seen, because I always keep up with those games, the Panthers games. I do feel like someone like Blackshear or Hubbard does come in a little more, but I don't have like the actual stats to back that, so don't like take it as proof. But yeah, I think I've touched on Foreman a little bit, and I think we both like Mike Evans a little more.
Oh, I'm going to add his follow-ups, because Evans, Samuel, and Palmer are obviously the only pivots if Stevenson doesn't go, being the late game. Yeah. And he says he also has Latavius Murray, likely need floor and to just not get burned.
Latavius Murray's probably a good floor play, honestly.
So that's I love John. I appreciate you, man. I hope you stuck around for the question. Obviously, I appreciate you adding all of those little sub bits, because it is really worth knowing like what you need from these plays as well. It's not just necessarily this guy may be projected more, but he's projected more because he averages more points per game, but it's a way worse matchup, and his volatility is a lot higher as well, right? So things like that are really good to know. So with that said, I think Latavius Murray as a pivot for Ramondre is a pretty safe floor. I genuinely do believe that. Obviously, it's a pretty good matchup for running backs against the Cardinals.
I think Curtis Samuel now
against the
becomes the
Giants.
flex over Mike Evans.
Yeah. Okay.
And I like to repeat this a lot because a lot of people don't know. Curtis Samuel, I think, is still second in the league in rush attempts again amongst wide receivers. So like I'll pull it up right now. Yeah, Deebo Samuel has 41. Curtis Samuel has 31. And then the next is Devin Duvernay with 12. Curtis Samuel is getting 188 yards rushing and a touchdown. And he's getting like 3-4 carries a game. And in like a point per first down, Curtis Samuel's like already basically a possession wide receiver with a low A dot. So you're probably getting like,
Yep.
a solid double-digit performance out of him. And then you're probably getting that up to like 15, which I don't have that same faith in Mike Evans all the time. And if you do need like a very safe play and not get burnt, I think Curtis Samuel is your guy over Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Very
Yep.
slightly.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And the second option, I mean, it's Ramondre in a vacuum, but knowing I would have Ramondre in over Deontay Foreman, and knowing that you have Murray as your pivot, I think that would be good because we're going to start Curtis Samuel, and you have the pivot to Latavius Murray. And I mean, I guess Josh Palmer, if you do favor him, yeah,
Yeah.
I think Stevenson and Samuel are the guys in your lineup. And then if Stevenson doesn't go, you can pivot to Mike Evans, Samuel, Palmer. I think that's definitely the best way to allocate those starters. Isaiah hopping back in with one more with Chark or Akers full PPR because we both have them as in our sleepers bust.
That's interesting.
I'm probably actually gonna lean with you because of how low I genuinely think DJ Chark's floor is this week. I think I'm gonna I think it might be Cam Akers, and that's disgusting. But I think like if you can project in your heart of hearts that Cam Akers gets more than 10 PPR points, then you should start him over DJ Chark. Like that, let's put it that way. That's how I feel about DJ Chark this week.
And theoretically, what do you think DJ Chark's like floor is in a full PPR?
This matchup, like 4 points, 3 points.
Okay, because I mean that's probably what Akers is going to get on the ground in like a bad game,
right?
Unless they decide to change up like the carries completely. But like 45 yards isn't really out of.
No, I could really see 2 for 25 for DJ Chark today, like legitimately.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean it's because Sauce Gardner made Stephon Diggs do that twice and Justin Jefferson once. Like, you know what I mean? He's held these Hall of Fame receivers to under 50 yards and 5 receptions. I don't think he's going to have an issue with DJ Chark. I'm just saying. And because he's not covering Amon-Ra, that's not his position. He's a outside shadow corner. He always plays outside the line. Like 97% of Sauce's snaps are outside the lines. He will cover the best big body receiver. If Jameson sees 10 snaps, they might get a little funky and make Sauce shadow him. But it's otherwise, honestly, they have 3 top 15 cover corners in PFF grades with, sorry, now his name slipped my mind. He's a running back as well. He's not. Michael Carter. Michael Carter, DJ Reed, and Sauce Gardner. So, I mean, yeah, I'm very worried about DJ Chark. A lot more worried than Amon-Ra for sure.
All right.
Hanson De La Garza, would you start the Panthers D or Broncos D in full PPR? Also, would you start Kamara or ETN? I'm probably going to start the Broncos defense in the face of Colt McCoy.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think the Broncos are already a top 10 fantasy defense in points average just in general on the season. So against you're playing 2 defenses that are against backup quarterbacks. I like Broncos more against Colt McCoy, who although I do think Colt is probably a more serviceable backup than Mitch Trubisky. And Trubisky probably has we know he has a propensity for turnovers. I think the Broncos are a safe and equal ceiling play, meaning like they're not going to get many points scored on them. Whereas the Panthers defense might collapse and allow that to happen. The Broncos aren't going to get many points scored on them and present pretty similar ball hawking upside as the Panthers defense does as well.
Yeah, I don't think you can really go wrong with either of these options, but yeah, Broncos defense definitely sticks out as a pretty safe option just because they're already an amazing defense.
Right.
Panthers have been solid as hell. But
up,
yeah,
Matt?
I mean, you basically go with. I mean, you're better with defenses than I am, but I think your logic makes a lot of sense there. And Kamara,
and then Kamara, ETN. Yeah, Kamara. Yeah, yep, that's fine. I mean, we'll give him one more game. if you can't do it against the Falcons, I mean, it is the playoffs, but it's not like ETN has really been giving you the encouragement from the past weeks either. And now his target share has regressed to under 8%, which is obviously discouraging for one of the better pass catching backs we've ever seen come out of college. At least Kamara has, that work kind of caked in, and a much better matchup, obviously, against the Falcons. Shout out, Matt. Grumpy Panda Bear is grumpy. It's hurting his heart facing Watson this week. Yeah, I think Watson
Christian
is
Watson. I mean, listen,
yeah,
it's
I
not a
think Watson's a
guarantee
very,
that
very great play.
Like Christian Watson definitely has like a terrible floor theoretically. It's just he just doesn't stop catching those touchdowns. It's not like he's due to stop catching them or to keep catching them. That's like not how probabilities work, but it's like
Right.
You probably suspect that this is unsustainable on like pretty low target share. I mean, 6-7 targets isn't that bad, but
no, but again, that volume has been a little bit more sustainable, right? It's not the 3 touchdown game where he had a 16%, but then it was the 2 touchdown game where he had a 28% target share, and then a 1 touchdown game where he had a 20% target share, right? So the opportunity share has certainly been a lot more encouraging. No, it's not elite Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson level target earning, but it's been the number one over that average over that stretch on the offense, right? So
yeah, and I don't think many of those came in. Okay, never mind. I was going to say none of them came within the red zone. I thought they were all like 28-yard catches, but yeah, 4 of them within the 20. So
for sure.
Yeah.
So the target value is there as well. It's not just like broken coverages, right? The target value is tied into a lot of those red zone looks. Which is something like, now that we're here and we do have quite a few more questions to catch up on, and everybody please keep sending them in. But I did want to take a second just because we are brought to you by the Fantasy Football by Broto app. And one of the cool things that I think about like true throw value and true target value is like you can literally see the fantasy value of the targets being played out in the analytic. Like Patrick Mahomes leads the league with 101 red zone pass attempts this season. The next closest is Josh Allen. He is 27 red zone pass attempts behind. This is before the Saturday game happened, but 27 behind Mahomes. So therefore, Mahomes leads the league in true throw value because the value of his throws are obviously much more valuable when they are happening in scoring position. Yes, he obviously leads the league in touchdowns as well, but they're cause and causality, right? Cause and causation. So I always think that that's really cool that you can actually see each kind of every single advanced analytic in like deep zone or red zone completion, deep ball completion, all those things played out into true target value singularly, which I love that stat.
Sorry.
Appreciate you. No, man, we got the World Cup. I was kind of distracted for a second too.
France scored a penalty. It's 2-1 now.
Was it baby? Was it my baby? Baby?
Mbappe, yeah.
Baby. Yeah. Mbappe. He's my favorite, man.
That kid almost got blocked.
That kid is unquestionably great. I mean, there's an essence about watching him play that game. And I am just a casual fan. Like I watch World Cup finals and I'll watch, like I go to Whitecaps games in Vancouver to watch MLS sometimes. But that said, like, you can very clearly watch that guy play the game of football and understand that he is heads above those around him. And I think that's very cool at such a young age.
Yeah. Makes me feel like a failure though, but anyway.
Yeah, same. I mean, okay, I do got to say, like, okay, we have a couple from Joe, and then I'm gonna bring up some sleeper busts and some more player news, and hopefully everybody keeps sending them questions. But I will say, like, I remember the first time that I really felt like I was like never going to be like successful or like whatever in athletics was when Ben Roethlisberger was like 21 when he won the Super Bowl. And I was like, I was like, and I was only like 15 or something, but I was just like, oh, well, I'm fucked. Like that's it.
I was 6 years old, so it's a little different for me, but
I think they're, I think I was like 15 and I was just like, well, I guess I'm never going to become anything because that guy's my brother's age and just won a Super Bowl. Like, I think I might be a little bit far behind in my athletic endeavors.
Well, that's why baseball is like, did they just tie it up? Holy shit.
Okay, crunch time is getting heated with the World Cup news, boys. Oh, okay, Mo Diesel just hopped in with a kicker. Joe, I am going to get to your question.
All right, let's
hey, boys, 2 questions: Saints D or Packers D? Flex question: DeAndre Swift, Marquise Brown, Mike Evans, or Elijah Moore? Pick one. Full PPR. For me, Desmond Ridder, Saints defense. I'm confident with that. I think I touched on that a little bit earlier. They're one of my top 5 defenses and obviously a priority streamer this week. Top 5 defenses. Again, I love defense rankings, man. People don't like doing it. I love doing it. Saints ahead of Packers for me personally. I think you're going to get a very low scoring affair, which is great for fantasy defenses when you're talking about that 10-point limit that reduces after yards are scored. And then obviously turnovers galore. Flex question is a lot more nuanced, but I also think it's kind of easy. DeAndre Swift, Marquise Brown, Mike Evans, or Elijah Moore. You can work from the ground up and say you're going to bench Elijah and Mike Evans over these top 2 options.
Yep.
And then you're going to take a little bit dive into DeAndre Swift's opportunity share the past 2 weeks and realize that the Lions have kind of removed that bubble wrap that I was talking about so often and so frequently. And yes, if they get inside of the 5-yard line, you don't need to expect to see DeAndre Swift on the field. It's going to be 3 carries to Jamal Williams and then potentially a 4th one when they because Dan Campbell gets a little aggressive. But yeah, a lot of high value touches for Jamal Williams. But the last 2 weeks has been the DeAndre Swift. He's been seeing an increased opportunity share, increased target share, more snaps than everybody else on the team as well. I think you have to start him over Marquise, who is with Colt McCoy against a Patrick Surtain-led Broncos defense.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, I think Marquise Brown's maybe a little safer, but even when Swift's been kind of bad, he gets like enough receptions to kind of qualm that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's it too. Is Marquise might be a little bit safer and even potentially possess a little bit more upside. It's not like we haven't seen Marquise Brown score plus 25 points a game multiple times. So yeah, I mean, that said, it's matchup based. Obviously, the Jets' one weakness is teams can rush on them. The game script says that the Lions are going to have to. The game script for the Broncos-Cardinals game says that nobody's going to have to pass. So yeah, and he has a follow-up here, which is Jerick McKinnon for the upside of that RB1 Houston Texans being the worst against running backs and Patrick Mahomes loving himself some jet, or David Montgomery for a safe floor against a pretty weak Philly defense that has looked better with Jordan Davis back in the lineup. Obviously, that kid is an absolute superhero of a stud defensive tackle. For my money, I mean, the best defensive tackle prospect I've ever seen come in the NFL. Or, what do we got? Or, I thought I was going to ask if there was a third option. Or, Jerick McKinnon.
or the secret third option. No. I mean, Jerick McKinnon is my bust for the week. Not that he's like a terrible player or it's a terrible matchup. It's actually a great matchup. But we're just expecting Isaiah Pacheco to continue to get the workload. Jerick McKinnon's never really gone over, 7-8 rushes, even in like great game script to close out a game.
Right.
And with what we're projecting, with what's being projected, with a 14 and a half point, spread in favor of the Chiefs, we're not expecting them to have to throw against Houston. And that's never really been the case for a lot of teams against Houston. So, Jerick McKinnon definitely has the home run upside where even if he gets like 2-3 targets, he can definitely take one to the house. He can take a rush to the house,
right.
But I'm really not going to bank on like super low volume, even in the matchup in this case. I'd rather go with David Montgomery. Definitely much safer. And, I think he does possess a little bit of upside to where, you're not like, shit out of luck. If you need like, 15, 20 points, like he can possibly achieve that. Right. But yeah, I'm not big on McKinnon this week at all.
No, I think the safety is David Montgomery. And as Femi said, it's not like he is without upside, for sure. Constantine just wants to say shout out, thank you. And thank you for coming in and tuning in for us every week, man. It has not gone unnoticed. I know you always hop in and hang out in the chats. Good luck to you in the playoffs as well, man. Let's bring home that hardware. And then finally, I think this might legitimately be my first one of the season. And I've been waiting the entire season for one. My first kicker question: Greg Zuerlein, Cameron Dicker, or Chris Boswell? And then Saints or Cards defense. Oh, Mo Diesel just giving me all the love of the things that I like. And then would you drop a Brady for Danny Dimes? So let's take it from the top and go all the way bottom. Cameron Dicker is my answer for that.
Okay.
I think
I'm
I
not
think
I'm
Chris
not like
Boswell.
big on the kicker theory to
No,
like
neither am I. I follow Linda Lyons.
yeah,
So
her kicker
Mo
rankings
Diesel,
are good.
if
I like them a lot. Yeah.
exactly. So Mo Diesel, if you need real quick kicker questions, man, hop onto Twitter, get yourself an account, follow me at PsychWard, follow Themi at Gridiron Greek, and make sure you follow Linda Lyons, who will help you with all of the great kicker questions that you need. For me, it is legitimately just a gut feeling, a Cameron Dicker, a Chargers Dicker the kicker. I mean, maybe not a gut feeling. I can bring up some stats. The kid's only missed one extra point all season. He hasn't missed a field goal over 35 yards yet. He's looked absolutely phenomenal. He is their unquestioned starter moving forward, a franchise kicker for them to replace the injured namesake that they had earlier. I literally couldn't tell you who it was. That said, I mean, I will do a little bit more due diligence for you. I'll at least pull up their projecteds and see what we got to work with. Now, we do have obviously Chris Boswell putting up great kicker numbers on a consistent basis. So that one is a little tough to say to sit him because I think he's like a top 8 option. Yeah, he is right now. That said, yeah, here we go. Greg Zerline is facing Detroit. He's projected the most with 7.9. And then we have quite a bit of a bigger gap with Cameron Dicker down at the bottom and Chris Boswell in the middle. I actually think that said, the Jets do have a pretty low scoring offense right now or projected at least with Zach Wilson under center. It's probably Zerline, but I really want to say that I won my playoff matchup with Cameron Dicker as my kicker. I mean, that's it. Does it need more analysis than that, Themi? Like, I don't think it does.
I don't think so. No, I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's about as elite, of
Thank you.
reasoning.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that's it. It's Dicker the kicker, and I mean there are going to be a lot of points scored on both sides of that ball. So
Did you hold on? Did you finish the rest of the question?
Nope, totally forgot. Got too obsessed with the kickers. Saints or Cards defense. Saints defense. I touched on that multiple times. Yeah, I do like the Saints being a super solid floor defense in the first place, and then having the turnover upside of Desmond Ridder playing his first NFL start, and then having them also having Lattimore back and healthy. Would you drop Brady for Danny Dimes?
Is that 4, or does it mean like he has to drop one of them?
Oh.
Regardless, I would drop Brady for Danny Dimes. He's having a very good season.
Yeah,
but if you had to drop one, I mean, yeah, it's Brady.
Yeah, it's Brady.
Yeah,
and I would stream Danny Dimes ahead of Brady this week. Absolutely. Actually, I might make some pivots to Danny Dimes. I know I have him on some benches and some pretty sneaky floor plays in there that I might just throw the dart at Danny Dimes this week. Apologies for skipping over the second half of that. Now, Alec. Hey guys, Connor or Pollard to start today? Thank you, my friend. I think it's Tony Pollard.
Yep.
Like, can we really bench Tony Pollard right now? Not only is he a top 8 running back in points per game on the season, he is literally the RB1 in points per game over the last 6 weeks. Like, so I don't think we can like, you just can't bench Tony Pollard. You legitimately can't. I don't think anybody. I said this to the Broto Fantasy writer chat like the other week, and you all kind of like rolled your eyes at me. But I don't think there's anybody with higher upside in the NFL at the position than Tony Pollard. Like, he might legitimately be the best running back in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean,
for fantasy purposes. Because he's a guy that you can. It doesn't matter what the volume is. It doesn't matter what the matchup is. He's doing nothing but putting up RB1 and RB1 overall multiple times numbers this year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can make a case for Eckler just because he catches like 10 passes a game.
And he is literally the RB1 in points per game, but not over the last 6 weeks or what. So,
but that's I mean, the fact that Pollard is doing this while also like being in a somewhat of a timeshare is insanely impressive. Like maybe like Breece Hall before he got injured, like because he was doing like dual threat ability. But even that, I don't know if that was like
this 12 target game was just.
But that offense wasn't like the same either.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, and exactly that offense with Pollard back then isn't the same that it is now. Like, yeah, so. Yeah. Oh, boy sneaking back in with even though he's on his brunch date. Last minute one popped into his head. He wants to start 2. Mike Evans, Rashad White, Deontay Johnson. So sit 1. And it's PPR. Okay, wait. Dicker the kicker. Dicker. I hardly know her.
Oh my God.
Sorry. And we just lost half our viewers. No. But I think Rashad. I think Rashad over
over
Mike
over Mike
Evans.
Evans.
Yeah. And then Deontay or Mike Evans is really the question for me. I guess Deontay.
Yeah, you probably get a little more safety with him.
It's PPR. I mean, at least Deontay had a serviceable game last week, finally. I know he's not finding the end zone, but that's also unpredictable variance. Steelers with Trubisky maybe even opens up his ADOT a little bit more, which we know Deontay is of the most elite separators in his league. If you don't know already, go check out his reception perception profile brought to you by Matt Harmon and the folks at Yahoo. I will shout out other brands that I think do phenomenal work, and they do of the most phenomenal work in the entire industry, in my opinion. And Deontay Johnson is as elite of a target earner as it comes. He's not just a product of Big Ben's low ADOT. He really does separate better than almost anybody else. That said, he is now a product of a terrible offense and a terrible offensive line that can't be supported by the decision making of a Hall of Fame quarterback. Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Right. It's a lot more nuance to the Big Ben leaving than just having a low depth of target there. But that said, I do think there's a little bit more safety. I like the matchup against Carolina a little more than I like Tampa Bay's matchup here. Obviously, he's going to earn targets at an elite rate. He is over George Pickens, although George Pickens presents a little bit more big play upside than Deontay does. Obviously, touchdown upside connected to that big play upside. But I think you can almost chalk Deontay in for 12 PPR points this week. We're talking 6 for 68. Doesn't seem it doesn't seem far fetched, and maybe even a little bit more.
Yeah.
Nick says he literally picked him up in a league to make that my team, and now I'm in the playoffs. See, I told you. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes it is really all about what's inside. That was fucking awesome. All right, sorry. How about Marquise or Mike Evans, Swift or Zeke full PPR? Would you start Zeke over Swift? Let's start there, because that's a legitimate question that I should probably ask as well. I should genuinely be asking myself this with the way that my roster ship percentage is shake down. Would you start Zeke over Swift?
That's actually a very good question.
Yeah,
I think I would. I think I would.
Me too.
I would lean Zeke in this case.
I think I would as well. Against the Jaguars versus against the Jets, who, as I said, obviously the Jaguars are a positive matchup, but the Jets, one fault is that they do allow decent rushing. But what if that lends more to Jamal Williams than it does to DeAndre Swift? And I'm not saying that, obviously the rushing opportunities are pretty split, but Swift has seen more snaps and obviously more targets as of late. That said, yeah, I think I would. I think I will. And I think I would feel pretty confident about it at that against the Jaguars. Zeke over Swift isn't crazy to me. Marquise over Mike Evans. Man, Denver's defense is what's holding me back the most. But we're talking full PPR, and we know that scoring setting obviously lends great things to Marquise Brown as of late with his, incredible target share in Arizona, and as it ended out in Baltimore as well. I don't know if that's quite enough of a gap for me to feel comfortable starting Mike Evans. That true matchup gap.
Yeah, I think I would start Marquise Brown too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's Marquise and Zeke, which I think you can also feel like pretty good about in both of those scenarios. We do have one more. We have 2 minutes left exactly on the clock before the hour ends out with you folks. I hope you keep coming in, and we'll do a little sign off and shout out. But Blurpy up in here, he wants a question answered. He's got ETN, Mike Evans, Jerry Jeudy, or Zonovan Knight for his flex. His RB1, Dalvin Cook, and Henry. Obviously, Cook already put up some pretty great numbers. Wide receiver 1 and 2 are Amon-Ra and D-Hop. It's a 2-flex league. He has Kamara in one spot, so this is for the second flex. And obviously, he was smart enough to list everybody out in case we felt there was any more viable pivots here. I think you have the right starting lineup in order right now. So now it just comes down to ETN, Mike Evans, Jeudy, or Zonovan. I don't think I would start any of those guys over Kamara in this position.
No, I don't think so either.
Already having Henry in a grand slam smash matchup against the Chargers run funnel, having Dalvin Cook already have given you a really serviceable week in that incredible comeback game. You're kind of playing a position where you can take a little bit more risk, I think, and Alvin Kamara presents Alvin Kamara level Alvin Kamara-ness. Whereas ETN against the Cowboys, I do still feel higher on him than consensus. We mentioned that at the top of the hour, but he's not somebody that I think is a must start option when you have such strong pivots. By the way, nice roster you set up here for yourself in the playoffs, my friend. I think it's the obvious options that you have in the flex, and then I think I might go Jerry Jeudy here.
That's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really see I mean, what does Mike Evans do for you that Jerry Jeudy is not going to do? Maybe the quarterback might be a little better if, like, Tom Brady, goes vintage. ETN, we're just not trusting, and
But
you know,
Ripien with like a low A dot, super conservative pepper targets to Jerry Jeudy as the only wide receiver one other than Kendall Hinton. I think it's
yeah. Okay, so Jeudy at the second flex for him then. Okay, and everything else.
I mean,
great.
just because you mentioned quarterback situation, obviously quarterback situation favors Mike Evans, but quarterback script might favor Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I think those are the right calls, my man. Mo Diesel back in before we close it out. We do have, I mean, we will answer every question that needs to be said. Every single question. I know there's still some viewers in here live. Nothing will go unanswered. Now, Juju or DJ Moore, that's a pretty easy one, I think. We watched Juju light up a really tough defensive matchup. It's the Chiefs. It's the Texans. We could start Juju over DJ Moore with confidence, I think.
You would like 100% go Juju over DJ Moore?
Yes. Would you not? I love hearing the opposite side, man. We got to give the people the process.
I don't know. I think maybe I'm scaring myself too much with the game script, not realizing that they still have to score those points before the game script gets to the point where, like, they're like absolutely running every time. So in that case, I can justify, like, it's not like Juju's guaranteed to only get 5 targets or whatever. And if he does, like, it could be great targets. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself out of it now. All right, yeah. I think Juju's the play.
I do think Juju's play. Blurpy wants to say, though, he kind of wants to stay away from D-Hop and Jeudy, thinks it might be an ugly game, as do we. That said, I kind of laid down what I think that game script could mean for Jerry Jeudy if James Conner or the Cardinals can find a way to put up points or even create a 7-point deficit. I think would be enough for the Broncos to lean a little bit heavier on the pass. With that said, if you want to stay away from those guys and it's genuinely in your heart of hearts to do so, I think it's Travis Etienne over Zonovan Knight. Excuse me, with very close. Probably the edge and game script and matchup, not probably the edge and game script and matchup might lean Zonovan, but again, I have him above consensus. That is something that I projected this week. I think ETN and the Jaguars score more than their allotted totals are suggesting. I think the Cowboys, especially with the way that Houston kind of exposed a bit of that defense with some of the packages that they put up last week, the Jaguars are going to have, because Doug Peterson runs a very, very similarly tricky, so to speak, offense with a lot of open motion and different packages. So I like ETN a lot more than, well, not a lot more. I did say it was small, but I like ETN more than Knight. If you're really feeling about the Jeudy matchup here and the D Hops, side of things, I think ETN is a safe pivot over Jeudy, but I still do lean Jeudy slightly.
Yep, I agree.
And last one, John Mueller, Jags defense, Lions defense. I mean, that is some ugly defensive pivots, my friend. That said, I know that the Cowboys are going to put up 3 touchdowns. I don't know that the Jaguars are going to be able to force a turnover to be able to be viable in your fantasy lineup to reduce that, 10-point deficit that has now declined because of those 21 points and 300 yards that are on the board. So I'm going to go with the Lions in the face of Zach Wilson. Just for the turnover. Just for the one turnover that we are like, if I were to put money on any outcome happening in any game this weekend, the Jets will turn the ball over at least once.
Yeah, I think that's how you approach that, basically. I mean, I wouldn't want to start either of these, but if those are your choices, yeah, I think the Lions present the better chance to force turnovers and maybe even get like a defensive touchdown, which probably shouldn't bank on, but if that's who you're gonna like risk it on.
His thoughts as well, and I'm glad we could help you drive home your confirming bias, man. That said, I mean, as long as I'm not missing any, and if you guys post another one while we're signing off, we'll be sure to answer it. But you can follow me at PsychWardFF. Follow all of the Broto guys at BrotoFF Tim, at BrotoFF Mike, at BrotoFF Jason, at BrotoFF Casanova. You can follow the app at Broto Fantasy and the podcast at Broto Fantasy. And for any of your app questions or customer service stuff, or to see how the app functions, go on Twitter and check out at FF by Broto. Download it. Google Play, Apple Store, Themi. Sign off. Where can they find you?
You can find me at Gridiron Greek on Twitter.
And Themi is producing some of the hottest content in the industry for Broto Fantasy every day at brotofantasy.com. He's all up in the Patreon helping out. Oh, yeah, there was one I missed. Make sure if you feel like supporting us, which helps us bring all this stuff to you for free, head over to the Patreon. Support the brand, patreon.com/brotofantasy. You get awesome perks as well if you want to join for even the most minimum amount. Things like Casanova's DFS optimizer, access to me in the Dynasty Discord for team consultations at any given hour, betting advice. We also talk hockey, basketball, everything in their life. So it's just one of the best communities around. Make sure you join, sign up, come hang out with us on a daily basis rather than just on Sundays. As always, I'm Matt Ward at PsychWardFF. Peace out.
See you guys.